I think that, well, I don't know what to think. Part of it is, isn't this the dystopian future that we were all afraid of? And yet at the same time, you listen to that and you go, well, that's pretty cool. Maybe it's not as bad as we've been predicting. I mean, we're going to be able to have stuff do things autonomous from us and do it intelligently and do it accurately, but according to our specifications. A household robot might not be such a bad thing. Hey, Scott. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Silicon Insider Podcast. I got that backwards, but it'll work.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah. What's your big story today?
As you and I talk, it's the end of the day, Thursday. We did a lot on housing and certainly, just people trying to figure out where their economy and their money goes from here. It's an interesting time where people are worried about the stock market, worried about tariffs, worried about inflation, and just this big cloud of uncertainty going forward.
I
It's
would characterize this era right now as uncertainty. We have no idea what's happening. And the interesting thing we'll get to in a minute, apparently neither does the Federal Reserve Bank. They Jerome Powell came out this week and he doesn't seem to know exactly what's going on. So I
right. I
guess
mean, nobody has, yeah.
just hold on to our armrests. We're in for a bumpy ride, so we'll see. Anyway, let's begin with I think we got to begin with Nvidia. Uh, we'll talk about them a little bit later about their stock price and all that, but they held their GTC 2025 users conference this week. And boy, the CEO Jensen Huang had some amazing things to say, predicting the future and also talking about competition and everything else. Let's go over it if you don't mind. But I think we're going to look back on this as an important event because of the things he said were coming down the pike. And they also introduced apparently a hot new AI chip, which is getting good reviews. So, but we'll leave that for now. Right now, Wang got up in front of that audience and the pretty sophisticated AI users and predicted several things. One is that AI is coming to the physical world. And by that means that AI will begin to be able to not only analyze information, but actually act on it through various hardware intermediaries, I guess. I guess this is really the Internet of Things. What we've
Right.
been
He calls it, yeah, he calls it, I was there for it. He calls it physical AI. He brought robots out on stage with him. He talked about AI and robotics. He talked about AI and autonomous vehicles and just the idea that AI will be running not just software on the back end of these, chips and everything, or perhaps the front end of these chips. It will be running physical devices that will be using AI to function. And that got the crowd, kind of thoughtful and quiet and thinking, are these robots going to be somehow thinking creatures or thinking robots or thinking cars? And that's what he seems to be pointing to when he talks about physical AI.
I think that, well, I don't know what to think. Part of it is, isn't this the dystopian future that we were all afraid of? And yet at the same time, you listen to that and you go, well, that's pretty cool. Maybe it's not as bad as we've been predicting. I mean, we're going to be able to have stuff do things autonomous from us and do it intelligently and do it accurately, but according to our specifications. A household robot might not be such a bad thing. And same with tooling on an assembly line. I mean, if our cars are even more reliable and spec down, you know, every screw is exactly lined up and spec down to a 100,000th of an inch or something, the world gets to be a better place in a lot of ways, a safer place, and probably a healthier place. Well, how do you feel about this? I mean, you were sitting there, you felt the tenor of the crowd. What did they think?
They were positive. Jensen Huang is a very charismatic figure. He's a person of the people. Before the keynote, he's out there serving Denny's breakfasts to people in line at SAP Center, and this is how he rolls. And when he speaks of where AI is going, people listen to him like they haven't listened to anybody before him because he's been so successful with it. And there is something about AI in the physical world. And you just hit it on the head, I think, Mike, saying if it means efficiency on an assembly line, people appreciate that. I'm not so sure we're going to see robots in our homes doing tasks all that much in the near future that we can just leave and go do our other things. But you never know because AI is just that, an ability to figure out what is needed. It doesn't always get it right, but what is needed and how to do these tasks to please the person who is on the other end. It's sort of like using ChatGPT, not always accurate, but it's going to give you the answers you want eventually.
Yeah, and if you've ever listened to those recordings of pilots right before a crash, they're doing a lot of things, but if they did 1,000 things simultaneously, uh, maybe airline safety takes a quantum leap again. I mean, we've enjoyed pretty safe flying the last few years, but what if it went another order of magnitude safer and more accurate? That could be an obvious instant positive result as a result of this of AI moving over into the real world, the natural world.
Right. I mean, think about how much robotics we use now, quite a bit for certain things, usually things we don't necessarily see or that are in our homes, but robotics play a big role in assembly lines, in flying planes. I mean, there's so much technology behind these things, and the AI of it all would, I guess, give that technology the ability to function and think and react a little bit more. Is that a good thing? I don't know, but that seems to be where we're going both in the software world and the hardware world.
I mean, human error could become an obsolete term, and think how many lives could be saved just because of that. I mean, we hear that on the news. You report that on the news almost every other night, some sort of human error. Okay, the second thing he mentioned was multimodal AI is the new face of business intelligence. It means it'll interpret commands in natural language, which means you're going to talk to it, manage various business processes at the same time. The idea we've long had this belief that the more information we have about the operation of a company as in real time, the better decisions we can make. If this thing is actually monitoring everything, this new AI, then we can make very smart decisions very quickly, and then analyze both structured and unstructured data to give a more accurate and detailed picture of the business. If that's the ultimate dashboard, what we've been looking for 25 years, that could change the nature of business.
Right. You think about how Siri had limits, Alexa has limits. ChatGPT, when you're talking, and OpenAI has done these demos seeming to have fewer limits and being more, like you said, just having a conversation with your phone as opposed to typing something into a search engine. But that gets the answers you need. It gets the tasks done that you want. And we seem to be moving that way. And I can't think of any better way to say this than just sort of how we interact with our devices, with our technology. That seems to be what he's talking about in that sort of area of AI. And it seems like we're quite a bit down that path already.
Yeah, I got a glimpse of it not too long ago. I was with a startup CEO, and I said, "Well, explain your business. What are you guys all about?" And he basically just took out his phone and talked to chat, and he said, "Explain our business model at a college level." And the phone went right into a long dissertation on exactly what the company did and what its technologies were and everything else. It was mind-boggling, and it took probably 3 seconds. The idea that you could construct businesses just by experimenting with different models in real time might have a profound effect on entrepreneurship and new business creation, which is exciting in itself because, America's arguably its greatest strength has always been entrepreneurship. It creates all the new jobs. I mean, the notion that maybe this could be one of the factors in our fear of AI, but this may be a propellant to our economy and to more new businesses being created, which is exciting. Okay, next up is AI at the edge will transform infrastructure and commerce. I think that means better security, better performance of operations, and also lower latency. I mean, decision making is going to be lightning quick. I mean, if we think startups and these tech companies are moving fast now, just imagine what happens when decisions are being made at the speed of light.
Right. And I think that is where we still haven't seen proof of performance. Every company right now says we're an AI company. So Amazon, which already lets you shop pretty easily and delivers things very quickly, is saying, oh, we're going to use AI to improve this. Okay, I'll believe that when I see it. But that seems to be what everybody wants to do, is anything you're already doing on a computer can somehow be made better with AI. And I don't know. Remember, AI still makes mistakes. AI has not been proven to be something that people will pay for. And all of these things are, when you ramp up a package delivery, you expect people to pay more for delivery. If AI is an addition to something, these companies want and eventually need people to pay for it. And that hasn't happened yet. And, these startups are worth a lot value-wise. But, we really haven't seen people saying, other than, hey, I subscribe to the advanced ChatGPT, or my work allows me to do that. We haven't seen people saying, okay, this is the next level of shopping or convenience that we're going to pay for.
It hasn't really crossed over the consumer world more than a kind of a novelty still. I mean,
I
some
agree.
people are using it. Corporate wise, they're using it. And
Right.
I think that's his next point, that the workforce of the future will be enhanced by AI, not replaced by it. That he sees AI as a co-pilot, that you're doing a task and it's another team member sitting at the table, or you're doing something by yourself, researching something, and it's sitting there beside you, uh, helping you out. Oh, go look over here and have you tried this? Blah, blah, blah. Uh, and then AI augmented leadership. I'm not sure how that one works. Is your boss going to be AI? Is your boss, how will your boss be supplemented by AI, except maybe monitoring you more? Or, I could see that being onerous. What do you think?
I mean, this is where Salesforce and Mark Benioff talk about a lot, the AI agent. So it would literally be, well, I don't know if we can use the term someone, but something sitting next to you, working alongside you, answering your questions, doing some of that busy work as an agent. And instead of having to hire an actual human, you would hire an AI agent from one of these companies like Salesforce. We've grown up with phone trees and automatic responses, CRM. It's very unsatisfactory. It's never been something that makes us happy. The idea of adding an AI agent to all of that, again, I remain skeptical that that's going to be something people will want to pay for.
Yeah, we got leadership down so well that we have to come out with 25 new books every year telling you how to be a good leader. And I'm not sure any of them have actually worked. So we'll see. I'll buy that one when I encounter it. A writer for Forbes covering all this said, the most important question business leaders can ask themselves today is, are we prepared? And suggest that in the next 12 to 24 months, we'll determine who will be the leaders of this new era and who will be the followers. That's suggesting that you better start adopting it right now, and you better start learning how to use it efficiently. 12 to 24 months, is that a little quick?
The uptick on ChatGPT was extremely fast and extremely impressive. But again, did it make a lot of money? No. I don't know. I talk to a lot of corporate people, but I'm not in sales or marketing or anything that would get into the corporate world like that. So I'm not the perfect person to ask if a corporation needs this and needs to upgrade this, but everyone seems to be going for it. So one thing we know about AI is it's not going to miss its shot. It's going to take its shot.
Oh, yeah.
And so it won't be one of those technologies that people look back on and say, gosh, if only it had a chance to succeed in the workplace or whatever. it's getting its chance because everybody is talking about it, even putting it in their names. So we'll know if people want slash need AI in their daily work lives or their daily home lives, I think in pretty short order.
Well, apparently the stock market's asking the same question. And Nvidia stock came out with good numbers, a hot new product that everybody's raving about. And yet it on the stock exchange, it kind of did this. It did better than a lot of the market, which has been in kind of a slump, except for a couple of days the last month. And Nvidia actually grew a little bit, but there seems to be this analysts are saying, yeah, Nvidia looks great and the numbers are good, but we're not sure about how well AI is going to do on the market this year. So it's still a bellwether, but it's a bellwether for all that's good coming out in AI, and it's also the bellwether of all the concerns about whether this whole subject is overblown.
Right. And I think it's also, it's not immune to tariff talk and concerns about where the economy goes from here. Nvidia sells a lot of its chips to foreign countries. Obviously, a lot of businesses do. And if that is going to get caught in a trade war, it's going to affect sales. And so we've seen the chip companies, we've seen software companies, we've seen just about everyone right now without a whole lot of direction and certainty about the future. And the market doesn't like that, whether on the overall level or the individual stock level. And I think that's why we're seeing so much pressure on stocks these days.
And I think it's going to stay that way until the White House apparently has that big tariff day that's coming up again. And we'll find out what the implications are. I know that you talked about where we go from here. Jerome Powell doesn't seem to be sure where we go from here. He came out this week. The Fed held interest rates steady, and he said things look pretty healthy. They look good. And yet he also said, this year we're kind of expecting maybe inflation comes back a little bit and the economy slows down. But we won't really know until the tariffs hit. And he even actually used that word we're not supposed to use, stagflation. That's like, opening Pandora's box when you talk about that. When you talk about inflation up and the economy down, you get into that terrible, terrible trap we've talked about before. What was the message that he was trying to convey? I watched it several times. I know JP Morgan believes that we now have a 40% chance of tumbling into a recession, but some of the other ones say no, things look pretty okay. It's kind of a Goldilocks economy right now. What
I
do
mean,
you
I would say
think?
the same, the reason the stock market is down a few thousand points over the last few weeks. I mean, there's just no certainty about where we're going. The current government is simultaneously cutting tens of thousands of jobs and putting something in place that is historically inflationary. So
Right.
could we see prices go up and the economy slow down? Of course we can. That's what happens when you have inflation and massive layoffs. And for whatever reason, that's what this administration is starting off doing. And that has a lot of people concerned. And that's why stagflation is coming up, because you have an economy that's really humming along. And one of the very few things that can put the brakes on that is a tariff situation that not only is inflationary, but that might cause some of our red hot companies to not sell as many things. Ergo, their profits go down. They have to lay people off. Meanwhile, you're cutting government to the tune of tens of thousands of jobs. And so you're putting a lot of people out on the street without work. And they're not buying as many things. So that's how these things go. It's always sort of a domino effect, whether positively or negatively. And I think that's what the Fed is worried about, is that some of those dominoes may fall in a negative way. But again, the tariffs have been on and off and on and off. And we just don't really know what's going on with the economy.
Well, I had two other factors. One of them is the business cycle. We've been doing pretty well for quite a few years, and eventually gravity, has its way with us. And maybe it wasn't supposed to happen right now, but it sure seems like we're overdue uh, for some kind of downturn. The second thing that's very concerning is you look around the world, show me an economy that's doing really well. Vietnam, okay, I'll buy that one, but Germany, Germany's in probably the biggest economic trouble it's had in decades. And other countries see, and we got the war in the Middle East, and China, of course, is in really bad condition right now. Uh, is it possible for the U.S. economy to swim against the flood if all of these countries are staggering along and entering into recession? Can we still stay economically healthy
I
in a
mean, I think
global?
we were for quite some time. I'm just not sure where we go from here. I mean, now we're starting to fight with some of those nations and sell less and buy less from those nations. And that's the engine that keeps our economy going. And so if we slowed that down, it really doesn't matter how they're doing, we're doing slower. And that's how things slow down. So I think we are creating some of our own, fate going forward. But right, it is hard to swim against the tide when you do see kind of an overall slowdown. That's understandable.
Okay, so we kind of had a rally this week, but at the end of the day, Thursday, stocks slumped again. They seem to be the bulls seem to be trying to get the markets back on track, but just this ever-present malaise and fear out there of what's next seems to be just pulling the market down. Do you see any relief from that until we hear about the tariffs?
Well, I mean, interestingly, if we hear that there are more of them, I expect the market will go down because the market doesn't like inflation. But you're right. Until we get some concrete direction, the market doesn't really know how to react. It's not sure if it's reacting to potential slowdown, if it's reacting to potential speed ups, if it's reacting to a lot of layoffs, if it's reacting to prices that are going to go up and stymie consumer spending. We just don't know. So I don't see how we can get into the next fastest gear when we just don't know what's going on. I mean, really, there are a lot of things that bring a market down, and uncertainty is one of the highest.
I mean, if anything could have got the market back on track, uh, climbing away, it would have been Nvidia's announcements this week. I mean, Jensen got up there, he predicted a glowing future where if he's correct, this economy is going to explode because every company he says is going to, they're going to want to have their own AI operation. And now you're talking $1 trillion of revenues being created and hundreds of thousands of jobs. He's predicting that around the corner. The deep seek thing he dismissed as basically cheering it on, saying it's good to have competition. That's what makes us be, stay on the ball. And he introduces a major new chip that's going to be the heart of the next generation of AI. Who could ask for more? And yet the market kind of went, yeah, that's great. Boom, and fell again this afternoon.
Well, look, I mean, what he did was impressive, and he talked about chipsets all the way through 2027, which is remarkably optimistic for a technology that's still fairly new. But I mean, put yourself in the place of an investor. Do I buy more stock when I don't even know if the company I'm buying stock in can sell to as many countries as it was able to yesterday? There's just no reason to go forward, except, hey, I've got long-term confidence in this company. I've got long-term confidence in tech. I've got long-term confidence in the American economy. But in the short term, and a lot of investors think this way, it's just very cloudy.
Yeah, if you're doing quick speculation, but if you're a long-term holder, I can't imagine a better time to buy some of these AI stocks. I mean, if
Um,
if even half of this comes true, it's a transformational event in not only the American economy, but in American life.
but look, I mean, a lot of people who bought in. When Jensen Huang was speaking, Nvidia was the second most valuable company in the world. And it had, I think, what, tripled in value in the last year and a half or something crazy like that. That's a lot of people that bought in on that
Even
promise.
after losing, you know, a huge amount of money, hundreds and hundreds of $1 billion in one day, it's still the fastest growing stock in the world and the second most valuable. I mean, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, so a lot of people are buying on the hope that this turns out to be a big thing. That's, I'd call, pretty optimistic.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, the company we never talk about because it doesn't matter anymore. And yet, last week or the week before last, Intel suddenly got hot. And it got hot on the rumor that Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, and Advanced Micro Devices and Broadcom were all talking about putting together a joint venture to run Intel's foundry business. And the Intel stock went up, and everybody was excited. Intel's back and all that. And then a board member of TSMC, I think today, said, no, we're not doing that. There was no plan for that. And all of a sudden, boom, down went Intel again. I actually think it's a pretty clever idea. I mean, Intel got all that government green money, plus all of its installed base of fabs. I mean, buying the rights to run that foundry business is a pretty smart business move by these companies. I'll be surprised if it actually isn't true. It seems like it's a workable idea and a really viable one.
Well, let's not forget. I mean, Intel had some pretty big news. It hired a new CEO, a guy who ran Cadence very well. That really boosted the stock price. People saying they agree with the direction they think this is going to go, and they really like this new CEO, and that counts for a lot going forward. But now he has to deliver, obviously.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cadence, is a design tool, a chip design tool company. That's a very interesting direction to come from traditional semiconductor people. But it might be clever because if Intel is going to focus entirely on coming out with innovative new designs, if it could jettison off its foundry business or separate it and put it in the hands of successful people, successful companies, that could actually be a very interesting long-term strategy for everybody involved. We'll see. We'll see if the board member was just putting up a smokescreen or, it really is not going to happen. We'll know soon enough. Okay, that's it for now, folks. You'll find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X, and of course, almost every weeknight on the BC Bay Area. And you can hear me regularly on the BBC radio show Business Matters. In fact, last night. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.